A struggling single dad and his 7 kids find unexpected warmth, kindness, and a chance to begin again in the home of a quiet stranger. The old truck wheezed as it crawled down a 2-lane road, headlights cutting through the bruised blue of twilight. Snow drifted lazily across the windshield, clinging to the edges before melting in thin, sad rivulets. Inside, the heater rattled but gave no warmth. Ethan's knuckles were pale where they gripped the wheel, the leather cracking under his thumbs like his own tired skin. Behind him, 7 children sat huddled in the bench seats and the floorboard, wrapped in whatever blankets he could find. The eldest, a boy of 14 with sharp cheekbones and a guarded stare, kept his arm curled around the youngest, a girl so small her legs didn't reach the edge of the seat. She clutched a tattered stuffed rabbit to her chest and let out a sound halfway between a sigh and a whimper. Ethan heard it, though she tried to bury it in the toy's faded fur. "You all right back there, Lila?" His voice was low, gravelly from too many unslept nights. Pause. Then a tiny, obedient whisper, "Yes, Daddy?" Her words twisted something deep in his chest. He tried to smile in the rearview mirror, but all he caught was his own hollow eyes staring back at him. The gas gauge hovered over empty. He pulled into the glow of a lonely gas station, its flickering neon sign buzzing faintly in the cold air. The parking lot was empty except for a snow-dusted pickup parked crooked near the ice machine. The kids stirred slightly as the truck lurched to a stop. "Stay here," Ethan murmured. The eldest, Caleb, spoke for the first time since morning. "We're okay," he said quietly, his voice steady in the way children sometimes forced it to be. Ethan nodded, unable to look him in the eyes. The bell above the door jingled when he stepped into the store. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, too bright, too clean. He fished through his pocket for the wad of crumpled bills and loose change. His hands shook, not from the cold, not entirely. There was enough for one sandwich. A sad, plastic-wrapped triangle on a rack near the counter. He set it down gently as though it might shatter under his fingers. "That all?" the cashier asked, not unkindly. "Yes, sir." Ethan's voice cracked. Outside, the truck's windows fogged with 7 small breaths. Back in the cab, he unwrapped the sandwich. The smell of stale bread filled the air, making the kids' stomachs growl audibly. Ethan winced. "All right," he said softly. He tore the sandwich into 7 uneven pieces and passed them back, one by one. Little hands reached out, careful not to seem too eager. "Thank you," murmured the middle child, Grace. She was 11 but looked older somehow. Her eyes carried a kind of quiet knowing that no child should have. Each of them cradled their piece like it was something sacred. Ethan didn't keep any for himself. "You're not eating?" Caleb asked, suspicion in his tone. "Already ate earlier," Ethan lied. The boy didn't challenge him, but his jaw tightened. When the pieces were gone and silence settled in the cab again, Lila shifted in her brother's arms. Her voice, softer than falling snow, broke through. "Daddy?" Ethan turned, smiling as best he could. "Yeah, baby girl? Are we gonna have a house again?" The words hit him like a fist. For a moment he couldn't speak. His throat felt thick, his eyes burning. "Yes," he whispered. "Yes, we will." It was a promise he wasn't sure he could keep. Later, when the children slept in a tangle of blankets in each other's limbs, Ethan stepped out of the truck. The air bit at his skin, sharp and unforgiving. He tilted his head back to the sky, where stars flickered faintly between snow clouds. The sandwich wrapper crumpled in his hand. "God?" His voice cracked as the word left him. He tried again, softer this time, like a man ashamed of his own hope. "God, please. I can't do this alone." His breath hung in the air like smoke. Behind him, in the warm glow of the truck, 7 small shapes shifted and sighed in their sleep. One tiny hand pressed against the glass, palm out as if reaching for him. And in that fragile moment, Ethan broke. He sank to his knees in the snow, head bowed, shoulders shaking silently. The snow had thickened to a fine white curtain by the time Ethan pushed the truck door shut. The sound echoed in the stillness, like a stone dropped in a frozen pond. His boots crunched against ice as he walked a slow circle around the vehicle, hands shoved deep in his coat pockets. The kids were asleep again, or pretending to be. In the faint glow of the gas station light, their faces looked thinner than he remembered. It wasn't just the hunger, it was the kind of hollowness that comes from too many losses in too little time. Ethan tilted his head to the side, listening. The wind rattled an old sign above the store door. Somewhere far off, a dog barked once, then fell silent. That's when he noticed the old man. He was standing at the edge of the lot, near the pickup Ethan had seen earlier. A wiry figure bundled in a heavy coat and scarf, leaning on a wooden cane. For a moment they stared at each other through the falling snow. The man's breath curled into the air like pipe smoke, though Ethan saw no pipe. "Evenin'," the stranger said finally, his voice deep and rough but not unkind. Ethan stiffened, giving the man a wary nod. "Evenin'." The stranger took a step closer, boots crunching. "Got a whole brood in there, don't you?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "They're my kids." "Didn't say they weren't." Silence stretched between them. Ethan glanced at the truck again, heart thudding. He didn't like the way this man noticed things, didn't like feeling exposed under that sharp, steady gaze. "You look like a man who hasn't had a hot meal in a while," the stranger said. Ethan shook his head. "We're fine." "Sure you are," the man replied softly. He crouched stiffly and set something on the ground. "A thermos? Coffee. Fresh made." Ethan hesitated. The old man straightened with a grunt and stepped back. "I ain't here to cause trouble," he said. "Name's Porter. Used to run a farm about 10 miles from here." Ethan didn't answer, but his hands itched from the cold and from the gnawing ache in his stomach. He reached down, lifted the thermos. Warmth seeped through his gloves. Porter watched him sip, eyes narrowing like he was trying to read something on Ethan's face. "You got somewhere to stay?" Porter asked quietly. Ethan exhaled a long plume of steam. "We're between places." "That another way of saying you're sleepin' in that truck?" Ethan didn't answer. The old man nodded, as if Ethan's silence told him everything he needed to know. "Winter's a mean thing around here," Porter said. "Mean enough to take a man who thinks he can tough it out." Ethan stared at the snow under his boots. He hated this feeling, hated being seen. "I've got space at the farm," Porter said softly. "Old place. Needs life in it. You and your kids can bed down for the night. Just a night. No strings." Ethan swallowed. The words sounded almost too kind. Too dangerous. "I don't take charity," he muttered. Porter's mouth curved in something like a smile. "Ain't charity. Just a man helpin' another man keep his little ones warm." For a long moment Ethan said nothing. The truck windows glowed faintly behind him, tiny shapes curled up inside. He thought of Lila's whisper earlier, "Are we gonna have a house again?" He rubbed at his face, the stubble rasping under his palm. "All right," he said hoarsely. The farmhouse sat at the end of a long gravel drive, the tires crunching in slow rhythm as Ethan's truck followed Porter's. It looked like something out of an old photograph. Wide porch, sagging shutters, smoke curling from the chimney. Inside, the air smelled of wood smoke and cinnamon. "Come on," Porter said, pushing open the door. Fire's still warm. The kids stepped in slowly, blinking against the light. Grace's eyes went wide at the sight of the flickering hearth. Caleb kept his arm tight around Lila, his shoulders still coiled like a spring. Porter gestured to a basket of quilts. "Settle 'em near the fire. I'll fetch some food." Ethan watched as the children sank into the softness, their thin faces bathed in amber light. One by one their eyelids began to droop. Porter returned with bowls of steaming stew. The aroma filled the room, rich and earthy. Ethan's stomach clenched at the smell. "Eat," Porter said simply. The kids hesitated. It had been so long since food came freely. "It's all right," Ethan whispered, his voice catching. "Go on." They ate slowly, reverently, like every spoonful was a blessing. When the bowls were empty, Porter stoked the fire and lowered himself into an old armchair. "You don't have to tell me your story," he said softly. "But I'm here if you need to." Ethan stared into the flames. For a moment, he let himself imagine the warmth as more than borrowed. When the last of the children drifted to sleep, Ethan spoke. "Lost my wife 5 years ago. Lost my brother last spring. Took in his kids, and 2 more who had nobody else." His voice cracked on the last words. "Been doing my damnedest to keep us all afloat." Porter nodded. "That's a heavy load for one man." Ethan rubbed at his eyes. "I thought I could carry it." "You've carried it this far." The fire popped softly between them. At midnight, Ethan sat on the floor near the hearth, watching the flames dance across Lila's sleeping face. Porter's voice drifted over, gentle as the snow falling outside. "You don't have to do this alone." The morning broke soft and pale, sunlight spilling over the frosted fields like honey over cracked porcelain. The farmhouse groaned faintly in the cold, its old wood settling, its chimney still breathing out curls of smoke into the quiet air. Ethan stood at the kitchen window, coffee mug cradled between his hands. Steam rose in lazy tendrils, warming his raw fingers. Outside, the 7 children darted through drifts of snow in borrowed coats and mismatched boots. Their laughter, thin but real, rang out across the yard like wind chimes. For a moment he let himself watch. Caleb was lifting Lila high into the air, her mittened hands reaching for a sky she had not trusted in weeks. Grace knelt in the snow, carefully forming a lopsided little heart with her bare palms. The sound of boots on the wooden floor pulled Ethan back. "You don't smile much," Porter said softly behind him. Ethan grunted, his shoulders stiffening. "Don't have much reason to." Porter poured himself a cup of coffee and joined him at the window. "You're wrong about that." By noon Ethan had pulled on an old coat from Porter's closet and followed him out to the barn. Dust motes danced in the shafts of sunlight cutting through the weathered slats. The air smelled faintly of hay and oil and something older still, like time itself lived in these beams. "Fence needs mending," Porter said, nodding to a stretch of broken boards. Ethan picked up a hammer without thinking. His hands remembered this kind of work. The rhythm of nail to wood, the small satisfaction of something broken becoming whole again. "Don't you have hired help?" he asked after a while. "Used to," Porter said. He was leaning on his cane, watching the children tumble and shriek in the snow beyond the fence line. "These days I let the land breathe." "Why'd you let us stay?" The words slipped out before Ethan could stop them. Porter didn't answer right away. Instead, he squatted stiffly to pick up a stray nail, turning it over between his fingers like a coin. "Maybe I was tired of the silence," he said at last. The children's footsteps carried mud and melted snow into the house, but Porter never scolded them. Grace tried once to wipe her boots at the door, but he waved her in with a soft smile. "Floor's seen worse," he said. At supper they sat around the long wooden table, the air thick with the scent of roast chicken and baked bread. The children ate slowly, shy at first but loosening with each bite. Lila dropped a crumb and gasped. "Sorry," she whispered. Porter leaned over and tapped the table gently. "Don't you worry about that, little one. Tables are for crumbs and laughter both." Ethan watched as Lila's face softened. He hadn't realized how tightly she'd been holding herself all this time, how much smaller she'd made herself to fit inside his broken life. That night, after the children fell asleep under quilts near the hearth, Ethan stayed up, staring at the fire. "They seem lighter here," he said softly. Porter stirred his tea. "Children know when a place is safe." Ethan ran a hand over his face. "I keep thinking, if I'd done things different maybe." "Don't." Ethan looked up. "Don't twist yourself in knots over the past," Porter said firmly. "You showed up for them. That's enough." The words settled into the room like a blessing. On the 3rd day, Porter led the children out to the barn. Inside, he pulled back an old tarp to reveal a tiny wooden table low to the ground. "Built this for my granddaughter once," he said. "Thought maybe we could use it for something." Caleb frowned. "Like what?" Porter smiled. "Like supper just for the young ones." That afternoon, Ethan watched as the children set the little table with mismatched cups and plates, chattering in soft voices. Grace tore napkins into hearts. Caleb carefully placed a candle in the center. When it was done they called for Ethan. "Daddy," Lila whispered shyly, tugging his sleeve. "It's ready." He knelt to see the table properly, his throat tightening at the sight of it. "You made this?" he asked. Lila nodded, her hair falling into her eyes. "For you too." The candle flickered between them, throwing light onto their faces. "Thank you," Ethan said hoarsely. Grace slid a folded piece of paper toward him. "We wrote something." Ethan unfolded it. In shaky pencil letters it read, "This feels like home." That night, Porter found Ethan outside, staring at the stars. "You're thinking too hard again," Porter said gently. Ethan rubbed the back of his neck. "I don't know how to accept this." Porter's cane tapped the porch once. "You don't have to know. Just let it happen." Later, as Ethan lay on a mattress near the fire, Lila curled up in the crook of his arm. "Daddy?" she murmured sleepily. "Yes, baby girl? Can we stay here forever?" Ethan didn't answer right away. He pressed his lips to her hair, tasting salt and smoke and snow. "We'll see," he whispered. But deep down, something in him, something he thought was long dead, whispered too, "Maybe you can." The snow had melted in patches, leaving the earth soft and smelling faintly of mud and new beginnings. The farmhouse stood steady against the late winter wind, its windows glowing golden in the quiet dusk. From the porch, Ethan could hear the children laughing somewhere near the barn, their voices lifting into the evening like sparrows. He leaned against the railing, hands wrapped around a chipped mug of tea, and let himself breathe. For the first time in what felt like years, his chest wasn't so tight. Inside the house, the walls seemed to hold a different kind of warmth now. Lila had lined up smooth river stones along the windowsill, each one painted in bright, unsteady colors. Grace hung paper hearts on the kitchen cupboards, and Caleb had begun whittling small animals from scraps of wood. Porter watched it all from his armchair by the fire, a soft smile on his weathered face. "Place feels alive again," he murmured. Ethan didn't answer right away. His hands traced the rim of the mug as if holding too tightly might break the moment. The days had begun to take on a rhythm. In the mornings, Ethan helped Porter mend fences and tend to the goats. The children fed chickens and carried water, their boots caked in mud and straw. At midday they gathered around the long kitchen table for bread still warm from the oven, steam curling like ghosts in the air. In the afternoons the kids played in the fields. Caleb and Grace taught the younger ones how to build tiny forts out of sticks and blankets. Sometimes Ethan caught himself smiling without meaning to. It scared him a little, how easily the place was slipping under his skin. One night, as the wind howled outside, Porter brought down an old box from the attic. Its hinges creaked like old bones. "Thought the kids might like these," he said. Inside were hand-carved toys, small horses, a train set, and a music box that still played a faint, tinny tune. Ethan ran a thumb over the worn wood, his throat thick. "These were hers," Porter said quietly. "My granddaughter's. Does it hurt to see them again?" Ethan asked. Porter shook his head. "Hurts more to leave him in the dark." In town, word began to spread about the man with 7 kids staying out at Porter's farm. At first, people were cautious. Then one woman arrived with bags of hand-me-down clothes. A grocer dropped off crates of vegetables and flour. Even the pastor stopped by, asking if Ethan might be interested in steady work repairing church pews. Ethan wanted to refuse, his pride rising up sharp, but Porter's hand on his shoulder stilled him. "Don't steal from them the chance to give," the old man said. The first Sunday morning that dawned clear, the family stood in the doorway, dressed in their new clothes. "Ready?" Ethan asked, his voice trembling. 7 pairs of eyes looked up at him. Lila reached for his hand, her tiny fingers warm against his palm. "Ready?" she whispered. They walked down the gravel drive together, boots crunching in unison. That evening, as the children set the little wooden table in front of the hearth, Caleb carefully placed Porter's music box in the center. "We're gonna have dinner by candlelight," Grace announced solemnly. Ethan chuckled under his breath. "Candlelight, huh? Special nights deserve it," she said. And as the match flared and the small flame steadied, Ethan looked around the room. 7 children, rosy-cheeked and bright-eyed. Porter, leaning back with his eyes half closed, humming along to the music box tune. He felt something loosen in his chest, like a door unlocking. Later, after the children drifted to sleep under quilts and dreams, Ethan stood at the window, watching the snow begin again in soft, feathered flakes. Porter joined him, his cane tapping gently against the floor. "You could make this your home," he said quietly. Ethan swallowed hard. "I don't know if I deserve that." Porter let out a low laugh. "None of us deserve much. But life gives anyway." Ethan didn't answer, but his fingers brushed the glass as if tracing the outline of the children's laughter still hanging in the air. That night, as the fire died low, Lila stirred in her sleep and mumbled softly, "Daddy?" Ethan turned, his heart catching at the sound. "Yeah, baby girl? Are you happy now?" For the first time in years he didn't have to think about the answer. "Yeah," he whispered, pulling her closer. "I've never been happier." And somewhere in the darkness, a quiet, healing peace settled over them all. If this story touched you, share it or leave a light where others can see it. These stories matter.